John Klingberg of the Dallas Stars, the defenseman, speaking to the media over the weekend, seemed to have been in some trade rumors, tried to clarify it and say that they weren't necessarily all true, but it seems as if him and the Dallas Stars are at a bit of an impasse when it comes to a new contract, and he doesn't like the way that he's being treated. I don't have the full quote in front of me, but he said those words, and slightly paraphrased. He doesn't feel appreciated. That's the exact quote. Thank you for that. What's going on there? And ironically, has that led to teams kind of expressing interest in trading for him?
Well, if you're Dallas, do you really want to trade him? Would be the question. I mean, look, it's the situation. It's actually kind of straightforward. You know, he's in a contract year. He's played 500 games for the organization. He's been a wildly productive player. And, you know, there were discussions earlier in the season on a potential extension that went quiet, that didn't produce the result. And I think at that point, you know, John, through his agent, let it be known to the Stars that he was willing to move on. That, you know, maybe not a full on, you have to trade me, but, you know, basically if you're not going to sign me, I'm open to this. And I think, you know, what's happened is more times getting on, there's frustration on his side. He doesn't feel appreciated. You know, I believe that to be a true quote. You know, he's looking for a monster deal. I think the challenge for the Stars is they already have obviously a few big contracts on their books. They've signed Miro Heiskanen to a significant deal as well, just shy of $8.5 million. And, you know, Klingberg's getting older. Do they want to give him an 8-year contract? Can they give him somewhere close to like 8 years and $8 million, which is, you know, what I believe he's seeking. And so, you know, I think what we have to see first with Dallas is, you know, they had a pretty emotional loss on Sunday. They ended the Penguins' 10-game win streak on Saturday. Like, are they a seller or not? I think we'll probably determine where this goes, unless it gets to a point, and this is where I don't think it is, where Klingberg's saying, I just won't play here anymore. Like, you have to trade me. Like, I don't think it got to that level. I just think it's been an emotional negotiation that went quiet. There's frustration on the player side. He's stuck in the business now, side of the game. And, you know, the Stars actually signed a really smart deal with him way back in time. It was a 7-year contract, I think $4.5 million a year, but they signed it when he played like 70 NHL games. Like, at the time, I remember everyone was like, wow, a 7-year deal for a guy that's played, you know, less than a full season. And it proved to be a home run for them because he was so productive on it. And basically they recognized the talent before he'd shown it, and they rewarded him for that. And so now he's at a point where he's got to chase the cheddar a little bit, and get what he's worth. It's totally fair. And I'm just not sure it's going to be in Dallas. And so, you know, I think it's a situation that bears watching. Just because it flared up over the weekend with those public comments, I don't think it's a sign actually he's closer to being traded or anything like that. I mean, if Dallas has any hopes to compete this year, you know, in the playoffs, have a run, I can't imagine them flipping him. Like, what are you going to get for him that's really going to improve your spot? Now, you know, there's still a number of weeks here before the trade deadline. And so I think this will run its course a little bit. Like, it'll go quiet again, and then we'll be revisiting it in the early part of March and see, are the Stars buyers or sellers at the deadline? If they're sellers, you know, maybe he's a pretty big piece that could be dangled.
So TSN shouldn't be rushing to put him on their trade bait board yet?
Well, I'm sure the bosses there would have him on the trade bait board. I mean, I'm not in charge of that board, but I do believe if there was a trade bait coming out this week, yeah, you put him on there. I mean, look, this sort of conversation comes up. You know, teams already knew he was a UFA and he didn't have a new deal, but now there is more room to at least explore what it might take to acquire him. You know, sniff all that out. But I'm just saying that it's not a slam dunk he's traded. Let's see where it goes, because I don't. My sense is that that's where maybe that's like the gray part of the trade report, is that I don't think he demanded out. I think he said he's willing to move on if they don't want to sign him. And I know that sounds a little bit like semantics, but it's different because he's still playing for his team. He's still willing to see what might be. But there's definitely frustration. I mean, you can understand it.
Absolutely.
He's been a really good player for them for a long time. He loves the city, he loves the organization, and he's not feeling the love back. And I don't think it's because they don't love him. I think that you have to make a business decision in a cap world, and you already have Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn and now Heiskanen making what he's making. I mean, you got to be careful how many players you commit those kind of dollars to in terms of building out the rest of the team. And that's essentially where the decision now lies for Jim Nill.
So we've gone through a lot of topics in about 30 minutes. You'd think this would be an ideal place to stop. Psych, we still have Ask CJ, and I still have to ask you about your latest for Inside the NHL, which you can read in the Toronto Star. We've seen some prospective names for Olympic teams, the men's teams, I should say. Eric Staal among one of those names, a guy who had not played in the NHL this year, was last with the Montreal Canadiens, still an unrestricted free agent, but has the chance, possibly, to play in Beijing in February for a gold medal. You got the chance to talk to him for your article. Tell us about that chat.
Well, what's interesting to me, I caught up with Eric Staal on Sunday afternoon, and a player with his career might just call it quits here, right? He's won an Olympic gold medal. He's won a World Championship gold medal. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's played 1,300 games nearly in the NHL. He's scored over 1,000 points. He's had a great career, fantastic career. And, he went through last summer after that cup run with the Canadiens, being, a role player on the Canadiens team that went to the final. And he didn't get a contract offer from an NHL team, or at least not one that he was willing to or able to accept. And so, I think at that stage, at age 37, some guys would be fully justified putting their feet up and going, do you know what? It's been a hell of a ride. And that's it. But Eric, he's been back home in Minnesota these last few months, skating regularly every week, a couple times a week, keeping himself in shape. And he's pretty motivated from the sounds of it to play NHL games again this season. And so what's interesting about this Olympic opportunity, of course, is that he's part of Canada's gold medal win in 2010. He was actually on the taxi squad with something they had at the Turn Olympics in 2006. It was his first full year in the NHL, or second full year in the NHL, pardon me. But, and he was part of that team as a very young player, didn't get to play any games, but, got that experience. And so, I think Team Canada is looking for, they'd love to have someone with that experience to take and be a leader on a team. And so this might line up just perfectly for him to go to Beijing, play, maybe show some teams that he still got that fire, that he's kept himself in shape, that, that it's not just words. He can sort of back it up there with his performance. And, all he has to do is sign a deal before March 21st to be eligible to play in the playoffs. And so, it was cool to catch up with him. It's just, you don't know how you're going to find a guy at that stage of his life. And he sounded pretty fired up, honestly. And he actually said it was the playoff run with the Canadiens that did it, because he detailed how difficult last season was for him. He got traded from Buffalo to Montreal in season. He's just like, all the testing and the travel wasn't the same, and the empty fan arena games. He just, last season sounded like a grind. He didn't use that word, but that's how he communicated. And then he said the playoffs come around. It was more like a normal schedule. We started to get fans back in the buildings. Obviously, by the time they played Vegas and then Tampa, was full buildings again. And it sparked something in him that he still has that drive and desire. And so, as we look ahead a little bit to now in a men's Olympic team with no NHL players, I think he'll very likely be there. It's not 100% done. He's dealing with some paperwork issues and things like that. But, I do think the odds are pretty strong that he's going to play for Team Canada. And then afterwards, we're going to be talking about him probably come back to the NHL. He's had 3 or 4 teams that have kept an open line of communication. I love the line he said to me. He said, there's got to be a few teams out there that don't even realize they need me yet, or something like that. And, I think he's just got a chip on his shoulder. Like he believes he can be kind of a player that chips in and plays small minutes. He'll play on the wing. He'll play center. He'll, bring a leadership component. He just wants to be part of a group. And look, there's a lot of guys around the league that did that. Brian Boyle had, I believe, a season off, and then he's now playing for Pittsburgh. And the Penguins, as I mentioned, just had a 10-game win streak. He's playing a role there. Jason Spetz has played a pretty big role with the Maple Leafs, but again, in a fourth-line role, in a very different role than what he built his career and his name on. I think Eric Staal is looking around the league and seeing other players his age. Corey Perry's still playing down in Tampa, and he thinks he can do it. So, I certainly don't doubt him. I do expect that you're going to see him get back in the mix here in the next few weeks and months.
Now I'm just curious about these teams that are interested in him and thinking of what teams make sense. Minnesota, because he's played in Minnesota, obviously.
And lives there.
Lives there. Carolina would be pretty fun to see. That's the team where he won his Stanley Cup chip with. I wonder if the Leafs would be interested in him. I wonder if the Avalanche would be interested in him. I thought he was going to the Avalanche last year, then he ended up going to the Montreal Canadiens. So I'm pretty intrigued about the teams who might want to. If
we're going to sign up for the story, and we are journalists, we're storytellers, I'd love to see Carolina, just selfishly. His brother Jordan still plays there. And he's got a huge tie to that organization, and I think the Hurricanes have a chance to win a cup. So I think that, it would be kind of a feel good kind of piece. But man, if he ended up in Colorado or Toronto, any of these teams, look, because money's not going to be the issue, right? He's looking for a spot. And so, I assume he's coming in on the league minimum. He's really trying to find the right position, maybe where they have a bit of a role for him. I don't think he wants to necessarily, I'm guessing he doesn't want to sign to be the 14th forward, at least not going in. So, it's probably got to be somewhere where he sees a situation where there's a need for him and then where there's a chance to win a cup. I mean, he's not just signing anywhere to play a few more NHL games. I mean, wherever he signs is going to be what we call a good team, potentially a great team, and he just wants to be part of it.